Filing lawyer.
Everybody, welcome to today's Children's Services Council meeting. Today is February the 2nd, and the time is now 3:18 p.m. and I am going to call this meeting to order. This is the first of two meetings that we will have in the month of February, so we will be convening today, and then we will also move forward with our regularly scheduled council meeting on February the 16th at 4 p.m. We do have a couple of audience participants in the room with us today. If you would like to make any comments throughout the course of the meeting, please be sure to fill out a comment card for Ms. Clay, who is sitting right over there, and then you'll have an opportunity to provide your comments as we move forward. Also, I do want to remind the council members just to keep us orderly. We don't have a full group, but I will ask one more time if we can go ahead and use the process of pulling up your name cards so that we can recognize all individuals to make sure we stay orderly with our conversation. Okay, with that, it is time for roll call. I will turn it over to Ms. Clay.
Judge Miller, Mr. O'Brien,
Here.
Ms. McFadden, here, Mr. Jones, Mr. Hannah,
Here.
Commissioner Cummings, Ms. Connor, Mr. Mitchell,
Here.
Mr. Watts,
Here.
Dr. Glenn.
Yeah, we have a quorum. All right, we're going to move forward. Thanks, everybody. All right, it is now time for us to approve the meeting agenda. Are there any revisions to the agenda? There are no revisions to the agenda. All right, if not, since we don't, I will entertain a motion.
Madam
to
Chair, I'll
approve
move the agenda.
All right, we have a motion and we have a second by Mr. Watt. So does everybody agree? Okay, absolutely. So the agenda has now been approved as presented. Thank you very much. It is now time for public comment. Ms. Clay, do we have any comment cards?
There's no public comment. at this
No
time.
public comment. All right, so let's move forward. Thank you very much. Okay, we are so excited. It is now time for us to hear a community impact stories. These are stories that are a result of our funding, our summer funding opportunities. And we have a special guest here in the room with us today who's going to talk about her experience and some of the wonderful things that happened as a result of funding for your program. So with that, Sika, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chair Glenn. So we are very excited to have the Achieve Academy with us today, represented by Ms. Adrienne Peters.
Thank you all so much. And I want to be obedient of the time. So I'm going to set my timer for 3 minutes so I don't go over. Next slide. So the Achieve Academy was built on this premise. If they can't learn the way we teach them, then we need to teach them the way that they learn. Hello, I'm Adrienne Peters, and I'm the founder of the Achieve Academy. I started the Achieve Academy in 2016 after being the principal of Governor's Charter and the principal of FAMU DRS. So what is the Achieve Academy? We are a nonprofit private school for students with special needs or learning challenges. We serve students from 1st grade to 10th grade in the Big Bend area. We focus on academics as well as behavioral support. So some of our kids have ASD, which is autism. They're on the autism spectrum. Some of them just have learning challenges. Some of them have behavioral challenges. So we give support in all of those areas. We were a recipient of the grant last summer and we got $20,000. We were so excited for that funding. And so we were able to serve 20 additional special needs students at Camp Achieve. So our focus this summer for Camp Achieve was for our secondary students. So we embarked upon driver's education for special needs students. You're right, exactly. So just a little research, because when you say that, people go, well, kids with autism don't drive. High functioning kids with autism do drive. And so 1 out of 3 autistic adolescents actually do have the opportunity to earn their driver's license. So I want to introduce you to 2 of our all-stars from this summer. On the left, you have Rajay and Ashton in 2nd grade. And on the right, you have them as sophomores at the Achieve Academy. Both boys have ASD. Now what you're seeing is Rajay with his driver's permit. And one more click and you see Ashton and his parents getting his driver's permit. So what the program really was centered around was really slow pacing the curriculum of learning how to drive in a way that these particular students learn, right? So there was a teacher, there was a virtual component, and there were the parents involved in teaching them how to drive. And we received the funding from you to run this program this summer. What else did we do at Camp Achieve? We provided hot lunches. Now, all of our students have unusual eating habits, and that's just a part of who they are and their uniqueness. But we were able to come up with 4 hot lunches that everybody would eat every day. Now, that's amazing. You just don't know. And then we were able to supplement the salaries of 4 of our teachers for the 5-week camp. And then the last day, we funded a water day and fun day. The last slide here is just a thank you. And I thought
The Achieve Academy is just that, a place where all can achieve. I am the proud parent of a student that attends Achieve Academy. My daughter is classified as nonverbal. When she entered the Achieve Academy, she had limited math and reading skills. She is now thriving in both areas. She is also thriving emotionally and socially. Thank you so much, Achieve Academy, for doing what you say you will do just by your title, allowing my daughter to achieve. Thank you.
Any questions?
Any questions,
I want to limit it because I know we're limited for time. It's great for the summer. For this coming summer, have you thought about what more you can do, how many more students you can serve? And this is sort of the first part of the question. The funding that you get for these kids during the regular school year, does that come through the school district? How are you funded?
A little bit of everything.
Is that a McKay scholarship?
Exactly.
Okay.
So all of our students, we have 20 ASD students. All of our ASD students receive Step Up for Students.
Okay.
Scholarships based on the matrix score of their disability. We also receive, many of our students come from Title I schools. So we receive Title I funding. And many of our students have IEPs, which would qualify them for IDEA funding through Leon County Schools. So we work very closely with the Title I department and the ESE department of Leon County Schools. And our parents really are the support that we really need. All of our fundraisers, everything, they lead the way in financing all of our other needs over the course of the year. Part 2 of that would be, what will we do this summer? The students have their permits, meaning they can get behind, we can teach them now. We want to hire a private company that specializes in working with special needs students to actually teach them to drive, get them on the highway. Their parents are scared stiff. You got to know it, right? They have a little piece of paper. We're not going to do that. So that being said, we want to hire the company to extend this. We have 7 other students that we'd like to move forward. All kids learn differently, and everybody learns at a different pace. So some of them were able to get through the course and some weren't, and they're still working on it right now. So the idea is that we bring that company in and we put them on the road so they can truly get their official permit.
And Madam Chair, just kind of a follow-up. So Ms. Peters, we're on front, and that's great. I'm trying to figure out what would these kids have been doing during the summertime if we didn't fund you with the $20,000 this
That's a good question.
And really, that was kind of where I was leading.
Good question. That's a great question. We offer a summer program to our students, and it is a paid summer program. So instead of serving 20 kids, we would have served 5. And that's just the reality of it, because the scholarships pay for the students to attend for 9 months. After that, it's like, okay, what are we going to do? And then many of the parents don't have the funds to pay for summer camp. So just being able to offer that to 15 additional, it was amazing. And it doesn't sound like a lot. I mean, it's not 30,000 kids we're serving, it's not even 100. But for a special needs family who's looking for something, it's amazing.
It is.
Yes.
It is amazing.
Please, no, go ahead. I get already.
I have a question on Achieve Academy because I'm just curious. It's a year-long, I mean, it's a full school curriculum. It's grades 1 through.
1 through 10. Each year we add a grade.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, how do you do with the 11?
Yeah, so each year.
You
we add a
anticipate
grade.
you'll move all the way up through graduation? Okay.
That's our goal.
That answers my question.
That's our goal. Yes, sir.
Thank you for what you do.
Yes.
Thank you all for the opportunity to provide additional services to that specific population.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Let's give her a round of applause. Love to see the value and the impact that our programs are bringing to the community. So that was a perfect example. Thank you very much for that. We appreciate that. Okay, let's go ahead and move forward. And it's now time for our executive director's report. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Green.
Thank you, Chair Glenn. This is going to be a very short one. So as you recall, we reported that while we are getting ourselves settled here, we were able to pay very, very little money to start our branding. And so if you came to any of the listening sessions, you saw where we have narrowed it down to these 3 designs, and we are currently involved in a public polling to see which design becomes our logo. So we have the designs up on a poster for those who did not come to any of the listening sessions. So we have 3 concepts. You'll see that they all have a tree growing sort of concept. And that literally comes from when people think about Leon County and Tallahassee, what do you think about? Everyone we talked to said, oh my gosh, it's all the trees. It's all the trees. So we had a designer, Brian from Be Easy Graphics. And so those are our 3 designs. We are currently in the process of voting. It is all over social media. We are getting a phenomenal response from the public. And they are not just telling us which one they like, they're telling us why they like it. When thinking about what it is that we want to do, our objectives. So we wanted to share it with the council, and we will have the final design at our grand opening on Friday, February 17th, ribbon cutting at 10 o'clock. The grand opening and open house starts at 3. And as council members, you should weigh in as well. So you can scan the QR code at the bottom and give us your favorite. And that is my report.
Thank you. Mr. O'Brien.
Not trying to get a sneak preview, but can you share how the vote is going? I'm just curious. I like them all, but
One,
I will vote, but I won't say which one because
twice, 3 times the lady.
I got it.
Okay. Well, Mark, I hope that answers your question. I
got code.
Yeah,
I will rely on Richie on the
It's
brain.
wonderful. Yes, ma'am.
I was just gonna say, all of them have the I always think of the family tree. You keep saying tree and I think family tree every time I look at it.
And that's part of it. A lot of the other councils, you come up with kind of regular, and then you come up with things that are kind of specific to your area. So we wanted it to be very distinguishable. And really show, some of the concepts you can see that it's literally the lifespan. So from birth all the way up, or it could be a family.
I do have a question for you. When does the voting end? I know you're revealing.
Yes, so the voting ends tomorrow. Is it 5 o'clock? 4 o'clock, the voting ends, and we'll get it tabulated, and we're moving toward unveiling it in 2 weeks.
Thank you. And one other question. I did see it at the listening session. How else have you marketed this other than on the website?
Oh, it's all over social media,
Okay,
and we emailed it out, Twitter.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. All right, just wanted to make sure. Yes.
So the top one, is that a hand in the tree?
So it's 2 hands, a little hand and a big hand.
Oh, I see it now. Yeah, okay. All right.
And then the second concept,
Oh, wow.
3 people. One is colorized, the other one is more 2 color. And then the last one are 5 different people that make up the trunk, and they start little and go big. And then the trunk, and then there are 2 color.
I need to get
concepts.
my eyes checked out. I see 3 in this.
Maybe if we call it.
Never look for the head. Look for the round.
Watching.
The little ones are in the front, yeah.
No, we have placards. We didn't want to
So
show
if
any
you
more trees.
scan it and then you pull it up on your.
Right.
Wow.
There's a place that you can click for those who might not be able to see all the detail and want it big.
Yes.
So it's like, if the image is small, click here for big and it goes big. But if you follow us on our social platforms, there's big versions there too.
And then you'll notice at the top where you see the big CSC, Leon. So that is, we just all kind of made an executive decision on the words. So I absolutely love it. I love the CSC Leon, and it gives us the opportunity to have that branding as well.
Absolutely. So thank you very much for this. I enjoyed, I did have to look at the high definition version because I couldn't see the small one on my phone, but it was fun. And I'm glad to know that the voting ends tomorrow. So everybody, please get the word out. And definitely we want everybody, at least the council members, to vote also. All right, wonderful.
That's it.
Anything else? All right, wonderful. Thank you so
Thank
very
you.
much. All right, it is now time for our general council update. Mr. Rowe, I'm going to turn to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a brief update on the status of the executive director's employment agreement. The governing council will recall that in the December meeting, Ms. Green's performance evaluations were discussed. The governing council voted to continue engagement of Ms. Green as executive director going forward. Based on the discussion by the governing council members, I took her original contract and I revised it and shared a revised draft with members of the executive committee, which met on January 9th to discuss it. During the January 9th meeting of the executive committee, I received additional feedback, direction to revise the agreement. I also informed the executive committee that based on my firm's annual retreat, I was not going to be able to attend the January 19th meeting of the full council and suggested that in case there were legal questions that came up about the agreement, perhaps it would make sense to move discussion and approval to the February meeting. So at the January 19th meeting of the full general council, the discussion was had that we'll bring it back in February and that her existing contract would be continued until the February 2nd meeting so that she has the protections and we have, the council has the protections of the agreement in place before the new one is entered into. When I suggested that type of motion to the executive committee, I was thinking in my mind that would be the mid-February meeting, which would allow time not only for me to make the changes, but to share them with members of the executive committee, get their sign off, send it to Sika so that she could review with her advisors and then wrap it all up a week ahead of the agenda deadline for the meeting. So as it turns out, I provided her with the draft after getting executive committee sign off last Friday, which was the 27th, and passed the agenda deadline for this meeting. So then my update is that our plan is now that we will bring it back to the full council at the February 16th meeting, at which time I'll go over the terms and ask the council to approve it. I discussed it earlier with Sika and she feels confident that she will have concluded her review in time to meet the agenda.
So what I'm hearing is that we need a motion to extend her contract for an additional 2 weeks until the meeting on the 16th. Is that
Yes,
correct? Okay.
please. I think that's appropriate.
Okay.
Well,
Yes.
I'll make the motion. I thought, because I made the motion at the last meeting that I think my motion was for the February 6th, maybe it was for the next meeting. And that it had a component of being, when we did approve whatever new contract we approved, that it would be retroactive going back to January 1.
I think the motion, because I did check with Sika, Ms. Clay, the motion was to extend it till the next meeting.
Okay.
And the next meeting happened to be 2 weeks early.
Then I would move that we take the existing contract that Ms. Green has, extend it to the next meeting. Extend it to the next meeting, and regardless of whatever we decide, make it retroactive as of January 1.
All right, thank you. Do I have a second? All right, we have a second from Mr. O'Brien. Do we have any support? Does everybody agree with that? Okay, all right. So the motion has passed to extend Ms. Green's current contract until the next meeting, which is currently scheduled for February 16th. And at that time, we will make a determination about the continuation of her contract. Okay. Did you have anything else, Mr.?
No,
Rowe? Okay, awesome. Thank you very much for that update. Thank you, committee. Okay, now it is time for the committee report. So most of these reports that we're going to be doing today is voting on everything that they presented to us last week, 2 weeks ago. So I'm hoping everybody had an opportunity to review all of the information that was in our packets for 2 consecutive meetings now. So let's start with the investment group. I'm going to start with you, Ms. McFadden, and if you could please provide a presentation around the adoption of the reserves policy.
Absolutely. So we reviewed this last week, but it is, really and just a reminder, this would be catastrophe reserves at 2%, contingency at 8%, so it's stacked 10% set aside. And the catastrophe is just we can kind of think mostly natural disasters, things like that. It's a very limited amount just to get us going, probably fundraise after catastrophe occurs. And contingency is the 8%. And that's more for like, you know, we get off cycle on grants or things happen and we need to make changes to our making sure we have enough money. That's what the contingency is for. We will do an annual review of these policies as a committee, and that's pretty much it on the reserves.
Okay. So at this point, let me just check in. Do we have to do a resolution? There's a resolution, right? Okay. So thank you so much, Ms. McFadden, for reviewing that. Our general counsel will now present the resolution. And then after he presents the resolution, we will have a motion and a second to approve the resolution. And then we can discuss anything else at that point. So Mr. Rowe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Council has before Resolution 2023-1, a resolution of the Children's Services Council of Leon County adopting a policy regarding funds held in reserve and providing an effective date. The resolution is very short and approves the policy as an attachment, basically Appendix A, and formalize adoption of that policy.
Thank you, Mr. Rowe. I will now entertain a motion to approve this resolution.
Second.
All right, we have a motion from Ms. McFadden. We have a second by Mr. Mitchell. And how do we vote? Do you all agree with the resolution? Before we vote?
Discussion.
Thank you. All right. So now it's time for discussion around the motion that is currently on the table. Do we have any discussion questions?
I just have one comment, and that is, I really appreciate what you guys did. I don't know who all made up the committee, but especially the contingency a component of it, because we're new and because the funding's just sort of getting going and we're finding our sea legs, we don't really know what to expect. And having a contingency pot, one, I think we're going to use it. I'm pretty certain we're going to use it. And two, it just adds flexibility. So I really do appreciate focus on that because it matters. It really will matter. So, thank you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Mitchell. Any other comments?
So I have a question. Where is it spelled out the percentages?
On the first page.
So I see. Okay. So this resolution just puts into play this policy.
Right. Any other questions or discussion from council members at this time? Okay. All right. So it's now time for public comment. Ms. Clay, do we have any public comment?
There's no public comment.
Okay. All right. So now it's time for us to vote, everybody. So the motion on the table right now is to approve the resolution to put the policy, the reserves policy in place. So let's go through this one more time. We have a motion and a second. Does everybody agree to this? Okay. All right. So with that, the resolution is passed for the council to adopt the resolution for the reserves policy. Once again, thank you very much for the investment group and the work that was done on this. So thank you for that. Okay. Moving right along, it is now time for Ms. McFadden to come back to you to discuss the RFI for the investment advisory firm.
Absolutely. So, you know, we had a really unique group of folks that got together to work on this. Included folks from the county government, state offices, private investors, et cetera. And part of what we're doing is pretty unique to our knowledge, to the Children's Services Council. So we did a lot of study on it. And so after, looking at the best ways to invest government funds, we decided that what we wanted to do was put an RFI out, so request for information out to folks. Because we talked to a lot of folks, we understand, we think we know what we're going to get back. But we thought, when we did this before for the technology issue, we learned a lot. And this way, we're going to find out what is out there, who would potentially want to invest in it, what are their backgrounds, and so forth. So this is really a learning experience. And if you go through the RFI, you'll see the types of questions that we're asking. They're very, if you've worked in with IPSs, there, a lot of what we typically see in an investment policy statement is integrated in here. And those are, those are the types of things we're looking for. So we're explaining the purpose of our money, which is really to have safety of our principal, maintenance of liquidity, and a return maximization. But we realize we're going to get a lower return maximization than other entities because these are government funds. We have to be very careful with them. And then it walks through what are the services that this firm could offer. And we're not only looking for investment services, but we're looking for advisory services. In other words, people that can sit down with the investment team. What we've agreed, we'd like to do it probably once a quarter, and look at what our cash flow is, how much we're bringing in, et cetera, and really have somebody that's working with us that can be advisory and not just parking the money somewhere and walking away, really, paying attention to it. So you'll see there's a lot of questions about the background of the firm and so forth. And that's pretty much it. So anybody have any questions?
Wait,
Yeah, okay. Yeah, before we go to discussion.
Okay.
That's it. Thank you. Thank you so very much for that. We need to entertain a motion to adopt this particular RFI, and then we can go into discussion. So do we have a motion?
I'll make motions.
Okay, we have a motion from Mr. O'Brien and we have a second from Mr. Watts. All right, so thank you for that. The motion is on the table. It's time for discussion.
So the date by which we want basically the RFI's return is March 3rd, right? Do we have any sense of the interest that's
Yes.
out there?
We do. I actually talked to a number of different funds, and so I think we'll get some good responses.
I do have a question. So once the RFIs come in, like what's the next, like, I'm assuming the investment committee will review them.
We will regroup after we get all the RFIs in. We will sit down and then we will. So we decided we were not going to craft an IPS, an investment policy statement, before we hire a group to work with us because we feel like they should be involved. So our next step would actually be then to issue an RFP or whatever the legal counsel suggests that we should release after that. But to do it after we have all the information in, so that we're formatting it in as good of a position as possible. Once we hire a group, then we will work with them on crafting the IPS and the investment strategy.
Okay, that's why I just wasn't clear as what the follow-up process would be. Thank you for that.
Sure.
Any other questions for Liza with regards to this policy? Everybody's good? Okay. It is now time for general public comment with regards to the policy. Do we have any comment? All right, we have no public comments. All right, so with that, it is now time for us. The motion that is on the table is to adopt this RFI for an advisement firm. So let's take a vote. All in favor? Say aye. Aye. All right, anybody opposed? All right, so with that, the RFI is approved. And once again, thank you very much for the investment committee for the work that's done. That's going to be released soon, and we're looking forward to see what interest we get on that. Thank you very much. Okay. All right, it's time to move forward to the Program Services Committee. And unfortunately, our chair, Mr. Jones, is not here. So are you comfortable reviewing these? Okay. All right. So with that, there are a couple of things that the Program Services Committee was supposed to talk about. Well, we'll talk about. Let's talk about the Community Investment Partner fiscal guidelines. So
yes, thank you, Chair Glenn. And let me say that Councilmember Jones is caught up in blueprint information that he could not extricate himself from to get to the meeting. So I did want to put that on the record. So you'll see on page 15, the CSC Leon community investment partner, or as we call them, CSC fiscal guidelines. This was presented last month. It also contains definitions. I think it's important to say that this is a dynamic document. While we will not change it in the middle of a procurement, once we finish a procurement, if there's something we need to go back and review and maybe change or update, then the Program Services Committee will do that and then bring that to the council. With that, that's it on this one.
Okay, all right, thank you so very much. We did go through this last month, or no, 2 weeks ago, yeah, so last month, right? So I hope everybody had an opportunity to read through that, so thank you for reviewing that. At this point, I will entertain a motion for us to adopt the CIP, which is the Community Investment Partner Fiscal Guidelines. Do I have a motion? So moved. Okay, so we have a motion. We have a motion by Ms. McFadden, and we have a second by Mr. Watts. All right, thank you for that. It is now time for discussion. Do we have any discussion items related to the investment partnership guidelines? I do have one quick question. You indicated that if we start through this, we realize something needs to be changed. Does that just halt everything at that moment, and the Program Services Committee will make those edits, bring it back to the council before we move forward? Like, is that the process, or is
Halt, I think, is probably a
hard word?
strong
Okay.
word. Yeah, I think it would be more bringing up something that happens in that procurement process that maybe we didn't have the forethought or the experience. That's a simple bring before the Program Services Committee on one of their agendas. Let's look at it and change it if we need to. Bring it to the council, they approve it, we keep right on going.
Okay.
So doing that will not impede RFPs moving forward. And we would not do that in the middle of a process.
Okay.
It would be once a process has completed
Okay.
before we get into another process.
So there is the opportunity to make changes if necessary.
Absolutely,
Okay.
because this is not passed by resolution.
Okay. Ms. McFadden, please.
Yeah, and one of those areas, I talked about this the last time that we were together and we looked at this, but I feel very strongly about it because I would really like to have it changed before the summer programs. And that is our funds disbursement on page 23 and the supporting documentation requirement of every receipt and invoice versus, potentially looking at deliverable formats and others that would make it easier for folks. And I just, maybe we're not ready right now. We have mostly big ITNs and RFPs coming out, so I'm not so concerned about it right now. But I think as we get closer to releasing the summer funds, I really like to relook at this particular section, yeah.
But the flexibility is there to make that happen. So thank you.
Liza, what's the difference of doing it now?
I don't think the staff was ready.
Okay.
They hadn't worked in that kind with those kind of things before, so I think we've got to sit down and over the next month or so, come up with how that would work.
Work in progress, kind of deal.
Any other questions or discussion items with regards to this? Okay. All right, so we do have a motion on the table to accept the CIP. It is time for us to vote. So, let's go to public comment first. Thank you.
There's no public comment.
There's no public comment. All right, thank you very much. Thank you for reminding me of that. All right, do we have this, is everybody in agreement with moving forward with this particular motion? Yes, Mr. Hannah? Yes, Mark?
Aye.
You good? All right, okay, so, thank you. I'm so sorry. All right, I appreciate that. No, not at all. All right. So with that, this has been approved and we are moving forward with the CIP fiscal guidelines. Okay. Yes, moving forward, Ms. Green, to the CIP data security policy.
Thank you, Chair Glenn. So you will see on page 37, the data and system security policy. We went over this 2 weeks ago as well. Much of this is dictated by our contractor for our grant management and data system, WebAuthor, and that is it for the presentation.
Okay, we did have a chance to review this last time, so I do hope everybody is familiar with it. I will now entertain a motion to accept the CIP data security fiscal policy.
Madam Chair, I will move the data and system security policy as drafted here.
Abstracted. All right, do I have a second? We have a second from Mr. Watts. All right, thank you very much. It is now time for discussion. Do we have any questions or discussion items from any of the council members? All right, and hearing none, it is now time for public comment. Do we have any public comments, Ms. Clay?
There is no public comment.
We have no public comments. All right, so now it is time for us to vote. How does, what's the term, the official term?
Is there consensus?
Is there consensus? I'm moving forward with it. Okay. awesome.
Favor.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so very much. So with that, this is now approved and we are moving forward with the final CIP data security policy. All right. Moving right along. Thank you very much. It is now time for us to discuss the RFAs, the request for applications for the summer bridge funding. Ms. Green.
And it is back to me. So you have in front of you on page 41, the RFA for summer learning. We went through this last meeting as well. We do have a few things that we will insert on page 42, the application process. We will insert that after our meeting with WebAuthor and that policy. And then on page 44, B3, you'll see a highlight. We will insert the URL that they will use to submit their budget. Other than that, we went through everything else and it's ready for approval.
It's ready for approval. All right, thank you very much for that. I will now entertain a motion to accept the summer bridge funding RFA. So do I have a all right, we have a motion from Ms. McFadden. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a second. I think I heard Mr. Watts like just 2 seconds earlier. All right, so we have a second. So now it is time for discussion. Any questions?
Madam Chair, I have one
Yes.
question. What is it that we're voting on? I mean, I read this. What is it that we're voting on?
To move forward with issuing the RFA.
The summer.
Okay.
It's a process.
Yeah, and the idea is this will go out. So we're addressing the needs of which part of our, is it 6 or is it now 7? Is gun violence 7? Is that, did it become 7
So this,
in this? I mean, is that how they?
it could be any of that woven into just the summer bridge program. So the summer bridge program, the learning deals with the slide. So any kind of enrichment or expanded services and programs that already exist
Right.
to help deal with summer slide, to keep youth involved in programs, as many as possible. So really any of those priorities can fit into the program.
Okay, and again, this to me is one, I'm in favor of it. I'm glad we're having this discussion. Last year, those who did the evaluation were appointed. How are we going to appoint those people who will do the evaluation of these responses to this application?
So correct, and just for the record, last year, because we were under such a
Right.
tight, we appointed. This year, part of our open house process and the outreach that we're doing is getting volunteers who want to interface with us. They fill out an application telling us what their acumen is, very similar to any kind of volunteer process for application evaluation. And then we will go through those to determine who might be best suited to evaluate these in specific areas. So last year we were just, we were up against the gun, whereas this year we have more of an opportunity to have anyone in our county participate in this evaluation process.
Mr. Hart.
My question is more on timing. When you look at the schedule, it goes through the process all the way through April the 20th, which is the final public meeting to select, or let's say the public meeting to select the finals. But yet the awards aren't made for another month on May 20th. Some of these summer programs, May 20th is going to push right up to the beginning of the summer. Are we comfortable that gives enough time for these organizations really to understand that it's going to be funded enough to prepare for the receipt of these children?
So initially, the reason why we did a May 15th funding versus last year we did it June 1st funding, was to give them that 2 weeks.
It's 20th here, but that's still, I'm just wondering, do we need a
Well-
whole month? Because that's a whole month from April 20th to May.
Well, if we get them out faster, then we can get them out faster, but we at least need from the 20th until quote the 15th to get all of the contracts out, executed and back. The idea would be that the funding would be effective as of May 15th, but as sure as we get the contracts back in, everything's in place, we can go ahead and do that first disbursement. But technically, the contract starts May 15th and goes through until August 30th,
Starts May 15th or May 20th.
May 15th.
This is notified on May 20th.
The bottom of the
Applicants selected for funding will be notified on Friday, May 20th. Oh, this is 22. Does this move back a year?
No, this date is incorrect. We didn't catch that. So that should be May 15th.
Of 23.
2023. So let's please note that change. And so with the motion, we need to adjust the motion so that.
So before we adjust the motion, can we get it like there's so the idea is in April, between now and April, the community at large is we're going to send out invitations. Hey, if you have a specialty, just have an interest in how your tax dollars are being spent, here's an application, fill it out. We're just going to, put together a group of people, a diverse group of people from different backgrounds, perhaps different parts of the geographically of the community. Maybe some who focus in on phys ed, some on special needs. Plot them together. They're going to review the applications, and then the board will vote on the funding in our April meeting. Is that the idea? Okay, so all right, this is
So they-
quick.
So they will review the applications independently first. Then they will come together as an evaluation group to review those 4. And then that will be presented to the council for the final decision.
Okay, one final question, Madam President. When are the applications due?
The applications are due
February the 20th,
Uh-uh.
March 22nd.
March 22nd.
Okay, so that's all, that's all accurate, right, I
Yes.
just, okay, so between now and March 22nd, we will have sent out to the community at large an application that they can fill out, really just an interest sheet, right?
Well, it'll be an online.
Okay. All right. Good. Thanks.
All right, Ms. McKenna.
So I might be throwing one in each other. If this Success in School Life and Program Application Summer Bridge is allowable for anything to go into it, why are we doing a separate summer feeding? That's to me, I've always had this concern about the summer feeding because I feel like there's a lot of money out there right now from rollover from the ARPA money in feeding. And so I'm just wondering, why don't we have it, let them compete with everybody else? Why are they kind of getting a special award in some ways?
So in the Program Services Committee, we were asked to separate the RFPs. So originally it was one RFP. And we were asked to separate them. And so we presented it to the Program Services Committee as separate RFPs.
Maybe
May have been.
Do you
Why
remember that
was-
conversation?
Yeah, but I had to leave early last time because so I may have missed that one. I don't remember it.
You weren't there.
I wasn't
Okay,
there.
three.
I don't remember that conversation.
I don't remember this conversation.
You, Holly can jump in, but let me say this before I let her do that. We were asked
There,
to
just
separate
missed
the
it.
RFPs, so that's what we
We may have
did.
missed it. Okay. Well,
When we contemplate summer feeding, we're not necessarily contemplating the feeding that goes along with the expanded learning, but ways to expand on summer feeding that is always happening. The example we use are summer break spots. So summer break spots mandate that the food that they serve has to be consumed on site where the break spot is. It does not or it no longer allows for there to be food taken away with the kid for other children at the house, for the family. They did make that allowance during COVID, but that expired on June 30th when that expired. And after speaking with several organizations, the flexibility to be able to do that again would be helpful. So, for example, someone who's already running a summer break spot could apply under summer feeding to get the funding to expand that service and be able to take that food home. And we would count that by the number of meals that go. So that's one of the reasons why. I mean, maybe my memory serves me, but I know we were specifically asked to separate them.
Okay, yeah, so thank you. So my follow-up would be, at some point I'd like to put on the table that we can, because how much money is gonna be in the summer feeding?
Summer feeding is, I don't have my sheet in front of me. How much is it? $1,250.
Okay, so I would like to see, like, late, I could make it from allow it to be an option in that out.
So last year, Second Harvest was a part of just one process that everybody was lumped together, and we made a decision to fund. So but now, for whatever reason, to Liza's point, we've broken it out where this will be funded no matter what, up to $250,000. And
Does it have-
the first question. The second question is, what, remind me again, the total amount of summer funding we've allotted in the budget?
1.6 million.
Well, that's what we allotted
Up to 1.6.
last year. We did,
That's right.
it was, for last year, the funding could have gone up to $2 million. It was, 2 million or less. We, as a council, voted on a cut line of 68%, 68 points out of 100. That brought us to 1.6.
So had we probably missed it, set the $2 million threshold again? When does that happen?
Last year it was 2 million. We actually funded 1.56.
Right.
This year, we only allotted 1.6 in the budget
Well,
for summer.
it's that if you remember the budget, if let's say this evaluation team comes forward and says we would recommend funding more. There's nothing hard, and I forget who asked the question, but when we presented the budget, there is nothing hard and fast about that 1.6. It was a proposed number that we would shoot for, and there are throughout the budget ways to move money in, and we may not even fund 1.6, but so that number is just a number. There's nothing that would require us to stick to it. We could go over if we chose.
To add on to that, so does that mean once we get those responses in and we realize that the funding that they're requesting and the services that we want to provide, if they exceed the 250, we have the ability to say, well, we want to go to all of them.
There's two different ways of doing it. One, we have reserves, so we can do it through that. The second is the flexibility that was built into the budget. I wish I had it sitting in front of me, but there are a couple of different categories that give us flexibility to move money into different categories. And there was, I think there was a motion made by someone that just allowed, maybe it was Mr. McFadden, that allowed us to do it nimbly, so that we didn't have to go through this massive.
I think it was up to 10% you can move without having a vote.
Yeah, again, I forget who made the motion, but it was definitely.
If it was me, that's what I
I think it was. I do think it was.
So we're not sealing at that number is what I'm hearing.
Right.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
And so to Ms. McFadden's point, or taking the questioning why we've separated this out, we've taken the food piece out and put it in its own category, right?
Yes.
And the other reason, and if I'm not mistaken, the reason we were asked is when we had the feeding component grouped in last year, I don't want to say it skewed the numbers, but you don't count feeding in the same way that you count services or participation. in programming. Feeding is the way that it is customarily accounted for is through the number of meals, which is different from the number of children that are participating or families receiving services in a particular program. So by separating them, you really know what your impact was in the feeding area by expanding programs that are already existing, such as I said, versus the actual learning programs, which are specifically talking about participation in the program or service that is involved.
I have a comment, but I want to go, is your card up?
Yes, it is.
Okay, please.
Thanks. Did you? Okay, all right. When I asked the question about the priority areas, it was because we pulled funding for feeding out that I was like, why are we doing it differently? Evidently because they were asked to, but I don't know who asked for it. Is there, do you know, Sika, who specifically asked for it?
I can't, it was after we presented
Was it a vote of the committee or?
no, Holly, go ahead.
If I may, it had to do with the actual application process and the accountability measures because of how we would measure things. And so during the meeting, we said in trying to create a single application where how they respond to the questions would be different, is complicated in the system. It would be easier to just separate them to be able to measure apples to apples for anybody who applies. That was the discussion, and it was just like, well, if it's easier, then just separate them. That was how when presenting it, because we were kind of going around the axle. Well, you're asking for this up here, and you're asking for this service line. That doesn't make sense. Would it be easier to separate? And the answer is absolutely, it would be easier to separate from a application perspective and an evaluation perspective. It was easier to do that.
So I just have, I'm sorry, yeah, thank you. I just have one comment. So, I mean, what is the downside of including the feeding with the process? Because it doesn't mean that, Second Harvest will be the only organization that gets funded, right? Because other organizations they may not get funded, right? They may not, right? They may not. And even if they did apply, that doesn't mean a natural and true. So I'm trying to figure out what's the downside.
So, and this was kind of the point of me asking the question to begin with. The downside, as I see it, is you have essentially two different evaluation teams. You have an evaluation team that's programmatic. Then you have an evaluation team that's food. Let's say Ms. Peters, for example, talked about the fact that she was able to feed those 10 or all of the kids one of 4 meals, right? So her application, she fills it out to teach kids how to drive. And she sends that in to one evaluation committee. They look and they say, oh, that's great. If I'm Ms. Peters, I want to put in for, I'm going to teach them to drive and I'm going to give them a lunch during the day.
She mentioned 4 meals.
Well, yeah, a choice of 4 meals.
A choice was
right. Whatever. But I want that included. I don't want to have to apply for, $18,000 over here and then send a separate application in for $2,000. And I'm making these numbers up to a committee that's going to review it. And they're going to be like, well, we don't even know if she's going to get approved on the other application. That is my point of I'm not sure I understand the separation of this. I thought the idea was we were giving points for people who tried to meet, again, is it 6 or 7 of what I vote the 6 priorities. That's what I thought we were trying to do. And by separating it, again, maybe it makes sense.
So if I may,
You ready? And then I'll go.
if I may, on page 44 of the summer learning, number 6, part of what they have to do to apply in summer learning, programs must include the provision of balanced nutrition to all program participants on program days, must include a sample menu with higher points awarded for programs who offer multiple meals each program day. It says that you identify the source. And if you want to add another feeding component, then you apply under here. So if it is something outside of what you include in here, then you can apply over here. But more importantly, what it allows us to do is segregate the data. We're comparing apples to apples in feeding and apples to apples in learning versus trying to merge all of that together. And that was a bit of an issue last summer because we're looking at this number of participants in a engineering program, and you're comparing that to 131,000. I mean, what was it? Meals that a lot. And so it kind of skews the data. So really, this is more from a data perspective. Now, of course, if you want us to combine the RFAs, we will do that. But from a staff point of view, it would be easier for us to have them separate. And then if a program is serving their food over here in learning, and they need extra money to do something different, let's say they want to then give food to their families to take away. That would be under feeding versus what they have to do as the learning program.
Okay.
But again, we will do whatever it is.
Goodness,
That's the will of the council.
Okay, I have two comments. One, I think from a public relations perspective, having the one on feeding instead of on gun violence or something else that I've heard a lot of in these meetings, sounds a kind of good message, not what we're trying to do here. So I have that concern. So I would like to make a friendly amendment. Who made the motion?
I think it was,
Mr. Mitchell, to have the feeding integrated into this
Yes.
first application.
I love that friendly. I see it as purely friendly and I would accept it and change my motion to.
before we do that, let's hear
I
from
have
Mr. Wyatt.
McFadden. Did I get it wrong?
I hadn't went there.
Mr. Wright.
Just maybe a point of clarification, and I only do say this from the first perspective of experience. We partnered in the past, and I think we continue. So, in a children's feeding program, we're not going to be coming to the CSC, just to let you know. We've done that for years. But it is exclusively just feeding. And so maybe the separation is these are feeding programs only, whereas the other are programmatic that includes feeding, because there has to be. You're going to keep kids all day long.
Right,
You gotta
and that's why it's.
So maybe the 250 is just for food only programs. I don't know. I'm just giving you the perspective that some of them are food only. I mean, they really are.
Thank you, Ms. McFadden.
I agree. I guess one of my issues and one of the reasons I want to merge it and just
Yeah,
add in the language about
perfectly
food
fine.
and option
Yeah.
is that I don't know if it's 250 is the right number. This way, the
Yeah.
evaluation team decides what's the right number.
And it's the same evaluation team.
Right.
But food is still an option in current jobs, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, all right. Just making sure.
And
Okay.
just to reiterate, in our needs assessment, feeding was, I mean, that was an
And
issue.
we're not trying to
that
say
we
it's
need
not
to
important.
address.
We're just,
And we just wanted to address it separately. So as we talk about staffing, not that that is the be all to end all, but for data purposes, it would help us to be able to keep them separate. Because when we show you what y'all did in feeding, it is a true feeding number that shows the number of meals and the organizations that did that. Then for our learning, if they apply for additional, then we can absolutely show that and show that impact.
All right. Any other discussion questions?
With that amendment.
Okay, so there's an amendment on the table and you are making the amendment that both of the applications be combined. And you're also making the amendment to change the date at the end. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I just want to make sure that's included as a part of your amendment. Okay, that's the motion on the table. I will recognize you.
I just have to clarify that the date should read Friday, April 21st, 2023. Apologies that edit was not made, but that's what it should be. Friday, the council makes their decision on the Thursday, the notification goes out the next day to allow for a 3-week window to negotiate the contract. My apologies, or our apologies for that.
Yeah, it was all of us. And then the date changed for number 9 on page 41.
Yeah, correct. So is the other one the 15th or is it the 21st? I thought we just got
It's
clarification?
supposed to be the Friday, the 21st.
Okay.
And the, where it says,
When they will
No,
be,
no.
no, Friday, April 21st, they'll be
They'll
notified.
be notified.
Yeah.
We vote on
Okay.
April 20th. We will vote to approve whatever we're gonna approve on the 20th of April. The 21st, they'll be notified and contracts will be signed as early as that Monday if you want, if they're ready, but before. Do we have a before date in this?
By May
By,
15th,
okay,
because that's when we want the funding to
Right.
start.
So, Mr. Hannah.
One last question. In the amended motion, did we merge the two together or did we just eliminate?
No, we merged them.
Is there a need to merge them together or is just the first one not suffice to cover all summer programs?
Oh, that's a good question. So his question is, since feeding's already included in the first one, can we just
But
eliminate the
it's kind
second
of
one?
not. So I guess I wasn't clear. So they have to feed as a part of their program. So the expectation is that when they make their program budget, that budget is going to reflect the number of, at least the number of meals that we require. That is different from any extra type of feeding.
So
if we
now asking for
combine-
two separate, it's just one application.
It's one
So
application
if
and
we
there's some
combine-
options in there, and then the team will review and pick which options they want to go with.
Yeah,
And that's in the amendment.
and it will be the same,
Oh, that's in the motion.
That's the
That's
motion.
a motion. Okay.
and I second it.
All right. So we have a motion on the table, an amended motion to merge the two proposals together so that feeding is included as a part of the first one. And then the dates were also corrected with your
And then
amendment.
there's one number of whatever we agree to as a
That's-
budget at the end,
Correct.
not two separate funding categories.
Correct.
And
And that
Just making sure we're all on the
Be
same page.
flexible.
Correct.
the board will vote
Right.
on the 20th of April,
But that
on
number.
whatever that number is.
Okay. So we have an amendment on the table, and I think everybody heard all of this. Okay.
And a second.
Yeah, and we have a second on the table, and we discussed it thoroughly. Mr. O'Brien.
No, this one, public comment.
Okay.
Right.
Miss, so Miss McPhail, do we have any public comments? No, okay, no public comments. All right, so it is now time for us to vote on this. So all in favor, let's just do a roll call, if you don't mind. Ms. Hannah, Ms. McCann.
Aye.
Aye. All right, we have all ayes. So the motion is passed. We are going to amend the proposal and combine them. So with
so
all of
with
the,
that, we can strike the second.
we can strike the second one. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you all for that party
Or we can
conversation.
strike number 4, just for the
Yeah.
record. No, I'm sorry.
No, number three.
We're striking
Yeah.
number 3.
So now it is time for us to move forward to the early learning project proposal. And once again, Ms. Rain, I'll turn that over to you. Which is on page
Oh,
59.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Look, I'm
You take a note.
trying to make sure I got, last meeting, council members, we presented a proposal to you from the Early Learning Coalition that would basically be what we're calling the Ramp-On program. So it would create a local funding category to allow Alice family in Leon County to enter the school readiness program. So in essence, the program creates a ramp-on or an on-ramp for families to access existing support. The investment that is being requested is $250,000, and the ROI would be 2.8 million and some. We have members of the Early Learning Coalition here if you have any questions, but that is the proposal.
Mr. Watts.
We need to have, I'm sorry, a point of order.
Okay.
Do the motion.
Okay, thank
I
you very
would
much.
highly make this motion.
All right, so we have a motion on the table and we have a second. All right, thank you very much. Now it is time for discussion. Mr. Watts.
In case I missed it, how did you come up with the 250 and is that enough?
We consulted with the Early Learning Coalition, and they looked at their staffing regarding what they would need to be able to help approximately 505 children. So it would be that amount that would pay the 1 month of childcare for that child. And they, with their staffing, would be able to use that time to on-ramp them into school readiness. So that is how we come up with the 250.
And you guys have a number of youth that you are expecting to have that.
So let's do
Okay,
this.
all right.
I don't know, our lectern moved over there, but if we could ask Liz Murphy, who is CEO of the Early Life Coalition, to please come to the podium and she can be available to ask any questions from their point of view.
As Liz is going up, because we have a motion in a second, at the, it's Thursday, so Tuesdays, there was a woman in the crowd, Ms. Brown, who was asked the question of the crowd, hey, what's your dream? You know, what would be your dream? This lady, you know, everybody kind of responds, and she looks up and she basically has a dream that is the proposal that we're talking about today. And it was literally, I just got goosebumps. I couldn't let the woman go. I always stand in the parking lot waiting for you know, everybody to get in their cars, make sure that everybody gets on their way safely. And so I'm standing there and I've got one eye kind of watching you know, our team get in their cars. Ms. Brown and I it's like 9:30 and I'm pulling out of the parking lot just because I was so fired up that a member of the community had this as a dream, and that the Learning Coalition had already thought about it, worked with Sika and the team, and we have a proposal that we can vote on.
Great, thank you for sharing that, Paul. Hello everyone, good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity. Mr. Watts, we were able to look at the data from when we did the non-CARES program and how many families we were able to serve in that short window of time. And so we looked at our current trends and how many we were enrolling off of our wait list and how many we were unable to enroll because their income did not meet the criteria for our current school readiness funding. And so based on those trends, we were able to feel confident on how many, unfortunately, we were having to deny services to. And we feel confident that we will be able to, in 1 month, it'll probably take a little bit longer for us to really see the impact from the time the child actually shows up to the program. But we feel confident that that number will meet that number, if not, probably more.
Is there any chance that there are fail-safes in place that whatever chance you get in the waiting list?
Well, the good news is that with this funding, it will be for 1 month, right? And so once we carry them over into our school readiness, it kind of clears it. And so we'll be able to see how many dollars are left over. And then any new families, we'll just keep enrolling them until all of the dollars are exhausted. Now, is your question about if we exhaust all the dollars? Wouldn't
You
that
come right on
be
that.
a wonderful thing? Absolutely. We will absolutely come back. We will make sure that we keep a very close eye on that and do some check-ins. And we will make sure that we communicate before we get to that point. Yes.
So I do have a question. So Mr. Mitchell, the same way we talked about the flexibility in the ceiling previously, do we still have the same flexibility?
We absolutely have. And I have to tell you, in terms of instant impact, and the you know, look, all systems have rules, and it's good that they have rules. But what Liz and her team brought to us was a frustration with the rules that if let's just say you're a single dad and you are making and you have one child and you're making $27,465 a year, okay? You qualify, you're in. And if the next month you get a $1 raise, you're still in, as long as you were in 1 month. Now, let's say you're the same single father who's making $27,467. You're out. Okay, what Ms. Murphy and the LC are doing is they're saying, all you have to be is in the system for 1 month. The CSC is going to help that single dad who makes $27,467 a year get in that 1 month, pay it, and then the ELC can take over at that point. This is exactly what the CSC was created for, in my view. And I was so fired up when the ELC brought this forward, and that's why I said I am so proud to have made this motion. So,
Mr. Hammond.
So I have a question. Could this single father have paid the $435 for that 1 month and then his child would have become eligible?
No.
So how are we paying help me understand.
So what the way that the rule is written for the school readiness program, if we find local funding to cover any on-ramp, is that the term? Any on-ramp, then we can go into the state system and we can create a code for the local funding that allows for whatever the council decides to cover. So let's say it is the 1 month, and then we can roll them over as long as they are still on that grid that Mr. Mitchell has in front of him, as long as they meet the other eligibility criteria. A local funding is coming from an agency and not from an individual. So the dad couldn't pay for the 1 month.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense at all.
It doesn't, and that's, I mean,
So we're paying the $435 to cover the kid for a month, and now that waives the requirements, and they can automatically then get the 11 months from the government?
It waives the income onboarding.
It's seed. It's almost like a seeding process. We're seeding the first month so they can.
Qualify for the next 11.
Yeah.
Yes.
And and so that income level goes up to the threshold then of 46.8.
Yes.
Anybody that makes less than 46.8, we can cover by this 1 month.
But they still have to meet the 27,465, is that correct? They'll be in that window.
So sorry, I don't have to get in.
But anybody below that automatically qualifies.
correct.
All right.
Right.
Yeah. So currently ELC can cover anyone in the green.
That I don't have.
Okay.
And
And
that's
then-
all right.
So we can.
That's my fancy schmancy. I carried that with
everyone
me
in the
because
green.
I was
What
embarrassed
we're
to know.
asking is for CSC
Yes, sir.
to do any of the yellow, and then we can serve all.
So how many kids do you think in our community we have not in programs because they fall in this range and they don't have the $435 to cover them for the year?
So when we looked, I'll just give you an example. When we looked at we enroll from our wait list every week. When we were enrolling from our wait list, I'm gonna say, I think the last time I looked at it was about a month ago. The example was given to me of the 20 families that were contacted, only I think it was like 7 were eligible.
And I ask just a follow-up to
Yes.
that, but that's not the only barrier
No,
that you're resolving.
correct.
Can you share like some of the other?
So a lot of it, so with this proposal, they would still have to meet all the other criterias. And so sometimes we have families that they don't understand what the other the other documentation that determines their eligibility is. So sometimes we have to walk them through that process. But the way that the system is set up right now is that if the family at the time of applying, they don't do all of the things that the system requires them to do, they will get a denial. And so then ELC has to kind of walk them through it, provide them some technical assistance so that they understand. And if they do have those things, then we can ask them, reapply again, upload all of those documents, then we can determine the
So
eligibility.
that's
Is
the
that what-
30,000 admin support.
Yes.
for this project.
It is a lot of TA with our families because they just don't understand when you're asking for proof of birth, what all is acceptable. Because I submitted this, but you're telling me it's not good enough. So our staff have to stay in constant back and forth with them until we get them to the point of eligibility.
So back to the other question about the number of children we think may fall, this may benefit from this. You're saying 20?
No, I was using the one example when we looked at how many we had to turn away. When we were trying to enroll, like, let's say 20 applications, we were only able to successfully determine about 7.
So this would fund 500 and something,
I will find.
so 500 children
I will
for $250,000. We get a year's worth of.
But, right, but it isn't, we're not just giving them $250,000. Right, we get our money back if they're not able to use
To
it.
find the 500 kids.
Correct.
Yes.
I mean, that's,
a no-brainer.
no, it is a no-brainer. I'm still.
You're-
understand a lot of the logic behind the government saying if you get another agency to give you 1 month, we'll give you the other 11. But
And
somebody else's problem.
we were able
Common
to
sense output.
We were able to see that it's worked in some of the other communities where the Children's Services Council has funded this program because they were able to demonstrate that that need was also a need for their community. And so we saw that as an opportunity too. We were like, wow, that's the same need here, based on how many we're having to turn away.
Where did we come up with the 500 number? That's just pie in the sky number?
No, sir. So we have a brilliant minds behind the scenes that do the calculation for cost of care and how many children we could enroll. So we're saying that would probably be the most
That we would find.
for the amount that is allotted. Yes, sir.
I wanted to ask a question in the other communities that are doing this. Do they have they seen an increase, a gradation over time by a certain percent each year? Do they run campaigns with it? What's the longitudinal increase that they typically see?
I really don't know. I can't really speak to that. I do know that it has, when we attend the meetings every month and we're able to see which coalitions have successfully been able to send down their entire notice of award, they were able to say that covering, like using this on-ramp and then rolling them over, we really have been able to keep children in care for longer periods of time.
Sika, if I could ask from a longitudinal perspective,
Yeah.
if we ask those other coalitions what that's been and what the gradation typically is that they've seen, I think it would help with budgeting and moving forward. So that we have a sense of what the growth rate's going to be. Absolutely. Mr. Brandon.
Just a question, as we enroll children through this process, the child care centers, is there a standard or requirement certification that you put in place as it relates to which ones are available to have these children enrolled? I mean, do you review these child care centers?
Yes, of course, it's still parent choice, so they get to choose. So our programs have to meet all of the state contract requirements. We are not gonna allow any parent to come to us and say, hey, I want to take them over here, and they not have a contract with ELC. And so we do various assessments throughout the year. And so if they score anything less than a 4.0 on their class assessment, which is the child teacher interaction, they cannot contract with us. Yes, sir. And we are so proud that we were recognized recently for having our programs at either 5 or above, and we actually were top in the state in one of our areas. So
That's what you hear.
sure, absolutely. Mr. Watt.
I'm just curious, the folks that have been denied over the past, is there any mechanism in place to, if this goes through, reach back out to them to evaluate it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Because we should be able to pull a report out of the system. And if not, then we will figure out a way. If that system can't tell us, then we will figure out a way to reach out to those families. Yes, sir. Good point.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Any other questions for Ms. Murphy? Thank you very much. We appreciate that. Thank you
Liz
so
and Zeke,
much.
both of you, I mean this, thank you guys, this, for just working together and getting this done. And getting it on the agenda and ready to move forward.
We look
Making a
forward-
difference.
We look
Yeah.
forward to the continued partnership.
Been
And we look
talking for
forward
a
to being
while.
able to
Yeah.
share all the good outcomes that are gonna come from.
That kind of to Liz's. Yeah.
Exciting. Thank you. so
Thank
much.
you all. Thank you all so very much for that. All right, it is now time for public comment. Ms. Clay, do we have any public comment?
There's no public comment.
All right, okay, so we have a motion on the table to approve the early learning project proposal. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so it sounds like our motion is passed. Thank you all so very much. We appreciate that. Okay, we made it through all of our committee voting, so I am so grateful for all of you for being here and allowing us to get through this. It is now time for us to discuss our next meeting date, reminding everybody we will convene in 2 weeks on February the 16th, same place at 4:00 is the time of that meeting. And as of right now, for the agenda items, we will review the minutes from the January meeting and this meeting. That will be a part of the consent agenda. We will have another community impact story. We will hear about the family support strategic framework presentation, and we'll all have an opportunity to have a discussion around that. And then we'll have a presentation and consideration to approve the executive director's employment agreement at that time. Are there any other items that we have discussed will be part? Yes.
Okay, and I don't know if this is happening to other people, but I have been getting. I just accept, if it says Jacinta on it, I accept, right? But then I start looking at my calendar and I'm like, wait, is this canceled? Is it not canceled? Do we have a list of, and I saw this one, but of ones that I can just go ahead and if it's not on that list from Jacinta, I'm gonna remove it from my calendar. And it may be user error, like I'm not canceling it, or it's canceled, but I'm not deleting it.
It's okay, so it's not user error. Something's going on with the calendar because we're moving particular date, then it moved and canceled the meeting completely, and that is not what happened today. The reason why a couple of them showed up. So I'm going back through to make sure that they're all correct, but it should be a standing meeting for 4 p.m. for the rest of the year. I'm just was trying to shore up the dates to make sure they're right. But this is why you also have a printout today to make sure these are on your calendar. And if they're not, then by all means, please send me a text or an email and I'll make sure it's on the calendar.
So this is through do we have them for? Like
You have a general count, you should have a standing council meeting on your calendar throughout till December of next
Well,
Okay.
what we may not have on your committee,
year. But
Right.
we'll look at this,
Right.
for the standard meeting.
Okay. So the 4 that I got today, that came, I was just like, yeah, that's all accept. I should compare that to this.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
And if I can say, if your Outlook isn't set up to automatically delete a canceled meeting, it will still be there. And it might say canceled or it might not. So. You're losing your that. So I don't know who's gonna be helping you with your calendar.
Oh, Diane.
Diane?
Moulton, yeah.
Second. Have I met Diane?
Yes.
Okay, so anyway, because we don't want you to be confused.
Diane Adams.
But when we have to, when we find out we're not gonna have a quorum, we try to get it off your calendar. So you're not sitting there thinking you got something and you don't have it. So we're working really hard to make this much easier.
No. I just, again, I accept.
Yeah.
I just don't want to be the only one here.
When in doubt, just text. Text. Yeah, because she's really good at following us.
So if you don't mind, so you have Monday, March 6th for finance and budget, correct? But up above, it says Thursday, March 6th for program services.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
that's a
it was
mistake.
an error. That's a typo.
So what is it?
It should be,
The
March 6th
9th?
is budget and finance.
But what day is it?
hold on.
Monday.
I know Monday, but what is the?
Are you sure it's the Monday the 6th? I thought we were doing Thursdays.
For programs.
For program services,
Program
it's
Yeah,
Thursday.
finance and budget.
Thursday.
So finance budget's correct. I think program services is
That
Thursday.
is correct.
So
Thursday, what day is that?
that should be 9 then?
Or is it the week
Third.
before?
It's a
Third.
tentative for
The 9th,
That should be
right?
the
it should
ninth.
be a tentative for third, for you talking about program services, I'm not looking at the exact. It should be tentative for the second, but you all won't,
Second.
for the first Thursday of every month, but you all won't vote on that until coming meeting on
But rather than
Tuesday.
the sixth, it should say the second.
Should say the second.
All right. And it's not on my calendar. I just looked. So
Not, the second is not on your
Second.
calendar, it's on there as tentative because you all have to vote on what day that you're going to continue, because we had to go back and counsel.
Right.
And
That's the
so we
last
wanted
thing.
the consensus of everybody of what day you're going to rate.
okay.
So that's tentative.
So thank you for that change that we have here for the Program Services Committee, Thursday, March the 2nd. Tentatively, as of
Yes.
right now, everything else should be right.
Yes.
But can verify, yeah, okay, with our calendars. Okay, thank you all so very much. Any other member comments?
Member comment? Ms. Sika, question for you.
Yes.
And for the group, the RFA that discussion we had about being combined, I'm just curious, does that set your timeline back any, or your process back any? And is there any avenue where we could have discussed it or, you know?
Well, so that's why we had it at program services. So it would have been nice to have this discussion there so that we brought it to you. But I think part of it is it doesn't dawn on you, you read it through the next time, you realize, oh. The thing that I'm most concerned about is the grant application. Okay, and Holly's telling me that's gonna be okay. And I'm concerned about the data extrapolation.
It's our applicants are going to find it incredibly difficult, but we will train them, and that's why we have capacity builders.
Yes.
It's gonna be
They will
fine.
help us do all that.
Yeah.
We will get it done.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not over here, so.
Our goal is to still release it on Monday.
Perfect. That's Mr. Hannah.
So I am very excited about what we did today with this $250,000 because I think it's the first thing we've done outside of summer programming that actually has an impact or potential impact that we can see. I mean, it's huge. When we laid this whole thing out a year ago or a year and a half ago, we've gone through now, we're going into the next second summer of just awarding summer programs, right? What is the timetable when we are going to start awarding more things like what we did today?
So that was kind of a special collaboration with a sole source. That makes it easy when it's a sole source and you don't have to.
Right,
do a
but it seemed like it
But
just, it fell in our lap and it was a no-brainer and we made it happen.
Right. So we had a timeline that we showed, I think it was program services that we showed. And there was some concern that the procurements weren't, I guess, going out quite fast enough and that we would only be at 4.5 million. So part of that was staffing. So the program services committee recommended that I bring a new staffing plan. And so that will go to executive committee before it goes to finance and budget. And then the other thing is, I think what we have to realize is the very first time we got revenue was after the trim process in 2021. So this council did not have revenue technically until January of 2022, which was when I was hired. And we moved through and did a procurement for the summer that spring. Then we went through strategic planning with this council to determine of the 3 priorities, how do we prioritize the other funding? You did that. So we have been working to come up with a strategic framework to present to the council on our recommendations from your guidance to look at programs or possible procurements. At that time, it was determined that that really needed to go through program services and not back to the whole council. So that's where we have regrouped And every one of those strategies, with our suggestions from the research we've done, from the conversations we've had, looking at the needs assessment and your priorities of possible funding of programs, whether it is a sole source for that particular thing or a procurement. So for example, when we have Program Services Committee next, we will be bringing the strategic framework for family supports, which is the next set of RFPs we expect, or RFAs or ITNs or whatever they might be, we expect to release in March. And there will be our suggestions from all of the information we have. And that will go into program services with one pagers to show you the justification as to why we think this should be the procurement. Program services will have that discussion, make changes, augmentations, all of that, finalize that framework draft, and then bring it back to the council. The council will then look at that framework draft and have whatever discussion and then say, yep, we're good with this. So then staff will go back and look at how we develop scope of work for each of those sections and then bring those scope of work back to the Program Services Committee, make sure they're good with it, then bring it back to the council. So it is I wish I could say it's just, we think you ought to do this. Now, as a council, I suppose we should open it up and tell people to bring us proposals, and if it works, and do that. But this one just happened to work because it's a sole source. And we knew it was an issue. We heard it all around. And so it was easy to put together. To that effect, incentives kind of would have been the same thing. But to Councilmember Mitchell's point, there is other funding out there that is doing some of that work. So now may not be the time to do that. So we are even looking at, from an early learning standpoint, if this goes well, which we know that it will, what is it that we need to do to expand it? Councilmember Watts talked about how do we look at those families that are not employed, are not in school, which means they cannot apply for ELC, but they need that to be able to get into school or find a job. So ideally, we would love maybe to propose that we fund 3 months of childcare while they are getting enrolled in school, getting what they need to get done there, looking for a job. And once they do, they can be rolled into school readiness. So we're looking at that as a possibility as well, but we are working to bring you recommendations and then let you all look at that information and then help us decide in the direction we need to go. I hope that answered your question. And if it didn't, let me know.
Just a couple things. One, last meeting, we had talked about adding an executive session, and I think we're kind of getting into an executive session kind of thing. And I just wanted to reiterate, I think it would be a really good idea for us to add it to the end of meetings. The second thing I was going to mention is I think part of where you're going, and CPM and I had a conversation about this, is so this ELC contract is a great example. It doesn't necessarily, and we didn't get into the contracting yet, but I think to your point, it doesn't necessarily have to have an end date, right? And we haven't talked about that, but there's lots of ways to either create an amendment process that they're allowed to come back to us, or to say this is an extended contract, and I think we should really think hard about the type of contract we're going to put in place, like things like this, because it does affect the budget. But it also lets people know that we have an intention in this particular area to keep moving forward. So I know a little more thought needs to go into that about how we would do that, but maybe part of it could be thinking through, is it a contract that we're asking them to come back and amend after they've met the first piece, like not necessarily having to reissue new contracts all the time. So it makes it easier on you guys as well.
And that's why you all approved 1, 2, and 3 year contracts. So you get a 1-year contract, things go well, you extend it and do an amendment. You get a 3-year contract, it's moving right along, we can amend it. So, and then contemplating the continuation of those programs, to your point, in subsequent budgets so that we have the.
I guess what let me kind of continue with where I'm going. That's where my question was, what is the likely uptick each year? So that we can budget accordingly and know when these type of proposals come to us, okay, there's gonna be a 5% uptick each year. And we're sort of building that into the long term, kind of looking at. And then the third thing, and this goes back to, I think what Superintendent Hannah was getting at is, this did come up in the program committee, and it was shocking. We were like, when we looked at how much we were gonna only spend this year. And so we did have the conversation about, okay, if it's staffing, we need to do that. But, I do think, and maybe it's the next executive session, we do need a game plan, I believe, to say, how are we going to get to $11 million? Because $4.5 million, now, I don't mind if part of it is saying, hey, we know that we're gonna set aside for the ELC for the next 3 years X. We're gonna budget it now because we don't know how fast they're gonna go, and we're gonna leave them a little bit extra. That would be okay by me. It doesn't necessarily have to be issuing tons of new ITNs. It could be, hey, what are we doing? That can be an add-on or an extension. Was there enough for now that we're gonna have more time? I'm assuming we're gonna have double the applicants we had last year for summer programming, right? And so, I don't know. So I'm not trying to ramble, but I'm trying to say, how do we, it would be helpful to me to see the timeline, the budget, and then for us to potentially have, even if it's another strategic meeting like we did before, but something that says this is how we're going to get to $11 million. Because personally, this is really, and I know it's bothering you, it's really bothering me.
Okay, thank you, Ms. McDevitt.
Oh, no.
First, okay,
No.
Mr. Mitchell.
So the two important points that Ms. McFadden brought up. And the reason I embrace the contingency fund is that does give us that extra flexibility in addition to the reserve. So it does give us that flexibility. But I think the most critical thing that has been raised today was also raised by Liza at the last meeting, and that is an executive committee where an executive session where we are.
But we're talking executive committee.
No,
executive
session.
strategic plan.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
where we're just sitting around talking amongst ourselves. It seems like the program committee starts a really good purpose, but the council isn't providing feedback. It's sort of an isolated, there it is. And I guess we can all go to the committee, like we can all go to every committee. But I think that as the 10 of us, and if you think about how busy all of our calendars are, with the exception of this one, which was a special meeting that we called, we're almost always all here, which is really impressive. So if we're all in one room and we can have conversations like this, where we're talking about programs and ideas, and then that goes to the program committee, and they sort of put a little flesh on the bones and a little muscle on the bone, and then bring it back to the committee. And there's this like regular process, and then it makes it very easy on the finance committee because I sort of know what's coming, and I can say, "Oh, we got plenty of money, you guys," or "All right, we're starting to get a little tight. Maybe we need to go into contingency." Again, we are new, and I get that, and so, but as we are now becoming less new, these are steps that normal boards take, and executive sessions are good things. And that's the purpose of the council to me, is to talk about ideas, get those ideas out. Everybody go in their committees, make sure we can do it, come back, we vote, and then, seek and team implement.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So I'm hearing loud and clear requests, and it was reiterated at the last meeting. So I will ask the staff if you all can look at planning another strategic planning session that we will kind of map this through. And then let's just look hard at how we operate our meetings to be able to have some type of executive discussion built into the process. And I think we have to make a commitment to being present and being a part of those conversations moving forward. So thank you for that. Yes.
Sorry, this is gonna be super quick. I would like, if possible, although we're good to join via Zoom, if that is a way, if there is a way for me to do that.
For the next meeting.
For the next meeting,
We welcome that.
even if I can't vote.
I know we've used the word executive session, but with our school board, only certain things can be talked about. When you say executive session, you're talking about out of the sunshine.
No,
executive session,
no.
and-
Strategic planning session, just like we did.
It's open to the public.
Okay, so we need to talk about executive session.
That's when I was.
It's a, yeah,
It's out of the sunshine and.
It's this for what we want to do, so we're calling it.
Yeah. Michael worked on it.
Executive.
I know, I'm not clear now.
within the confines of the regular agenda.
All right. Any other?
I was.
member
confused. Well,
comments?
that's what was.
Any other comments? All right, guys. So with that, we're at 4:57 and our meeting is now adjourned. So thank you all so much.
Good
for your time
meeting.
today.
This was
Yeah.
making progress.
This one.
Okay, we have to leave our binders once again, right?